Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bari-Connected Podcast. And today we're being joined by Kim Tarapelli. Kim, say hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here.
And Kim's joined us several times before. She's an amazing person. I just can't say enough good things. She's a registered dietitian who actually specializes in bariatric sports nutrition and has worked with bariatric clients and athletes for over 18 years. And Kim has worked in both the inpatient and the outpatient setting in hospitals and clinics, bariatric surgical clinics, worked and served as a collegiate sports dietitian for Division I University. She also is certified specialist in sports dietetics, and really you've just taken this passion that you have of both bariatrics and sports and combine them. And I don't really know of anyone else out there right now that's being really active in the community that's doing what you're doing. And I think it's such an important niche because so many people, after having weight loss surgery, decide that they're going to kind of just really are wanting to get into this health lifestyle. And a lot of it does involve athletics of some sort. So exciting to have you. And today we're going to be talking about nutrition strategies to fuel endurance training after bariatric surgery. So, Kim, take that, and I'd love for you to tell us more about yourself and what got you into this.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here again. Yeah, so practiced. Became a bariatric dietitian really out of the gate when I started in nutrition almost 19 years now ago. My first job was in a hospital working with patients who had just had bariatric surgery and helping them through that discharge and kind of what their life is going to look like nutritionally. And from there, because I always had a passion personally as myself as someone that was in sports, I played soccer, Division I soccer. I was always into sports nutrition, and so outside of my work in the bariatric facility and the floor that I covered there, I did a lot of sports nutrition with athletes, and I was the team dietitian here at Fresno State University for about 7 years. But all that time still working with bariatric patients, and throughout my kind of career, I basically worked in both areas. And a couple years ago, back in 2022 now, I decided, you know what? There's so many questions about how to fuel someone that has had bariatric surgery. What do I do with my nutrition when I want to gain muscle or I want to train for a half marathon or a triathlon or something like that? And there's just so many questions out there on how do I change my nutrition for these new, training and fitness goals. And so I ended up opening up my own private practice, Active Bariatric Nutrition, where I work with folks both in group settings as well as one-on-one to help them really optimize their nutrition to meet their, new goals after surgery. And also now I work with folks that are also on GLP-1s. So that's kind of a newer area too that needs assistance when their intake is limited and they need to learn how to eat properly to help fuel these goals. So it's been a great kind of, time going through all these different, experiences, but it's been wonderful to work with folks and really help them achieve their goals. I love doing it.
Well, it is. And I think too, it's exciting because when people make all these big changes with their weight and lifestyle and stuff, it gets a little tricky because what would you see are the biggest, I'm going to say not roadblocks, but maybe like things that people have to overcome to get to those levels of fitness and nutrition. What would you say are some, like when you're seeing clients, what are some of the biggest ways that people are wanting you to help them?
Yeah. Well, of course, because after bariatric surgery specifically, they've had their body permanently changed. And so they can't eat the same that they used to. And so one of the biggest areas that can be kind of confusing and confounding for folks that have had surgery is that they have a new smaller stomach, their appetite is somewhat reduced, especially earlier on, and they're trying now to move their bodies more, which requires more nutrition. And so the fields of bariatric nutrition and sports nutrition are often opposing because, bariatrics will, a type of nutrition will tell you like lower intake, focus on protein, lower carbohydrate. Whereas for someone that's more active, they may need more calories and more carbohydrates hydrate, and how do we merge those two areas so that folks feel well and they still achieve their body composition goals that they want, obviously after having had surgery. And so I would also say the second most, thing that they have to overcome is just that relationship with food and understanding that nutrition is going to be helpful for me to achieve my goals. And that might mean in certain cycles or seasons of a year, I might have to increase my overall intake, right? And how do I do that in a way that's going to help me to meet my goal and still steer me on my path to my body composition goals? So there's lots of kind of individualized tweaks that we have to make based on their goals, where they are from their surgery to help them. So I would say those are probably the two biggest ones is, how do I fuel for this? And, oh my gosh, am I allowed to eat a little bit more? Can I have carbs? Those are some of the big questions I get.
Yeah, and I see there's lots of people that are joining us from all over. We're actually live streaming right now on Zoom, but we also are live streaming on Facebook. So I want to welcome, if anybody is joining on Facebook, make sure and tell us hi. We have lots of people here saying hi from all over the US and just a little bit of everywhere, South Dakota, Chicago, um, Michigan. I'm trying to look at all the different Georgia, just looking at all these wonderful people. Somebody is already asking, how do I train more for strength? I'm learning how to walk again, and my goal is to do a 5K. So I'm sure that'll be incorporated a little bit
Yep.
into this, especially the nutrition piece.
Yes, absolutely. You
So we'll
can
be
do
talking
both.
about that. And if anybody does want to jump off or need to jump off early, if you're on the live version, this will be available for replay shortly after the event and using the same link. We also do place all of our events on our Bari-Connected platform, which is on all major podcasts. And then we also do place the recordings on ProCare Health's YouTube channel. So those are also two things. So keep saying hello. Hello, Samantha. I see. And Tina, we have some more people joining. I'm going to go ahead and kind of turn it over to you, Kim, because we have a presentation kind of out there for you guys. Because of the way Kim usually presents, Kim, you usually like to kind of have people be taking their questions and reserving those, and we'll probably go ahead and answer most of the questions after
Yep. That sounds
Kim
good.
presents. So what I'm going to do is there is a Q&A box. If you are on the platform of Zoom, please type in your questions in the Q&A or in the chat feature on Zoom or Facebook, either one as well. So Kim, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself just so that I can make sure that you have total silence in the background. And please feel free to periodically, if you need to pause just for a second, feel free to do that as well.
Will
So I'm
do.
going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up your presentation here.
Sounds good.
And
And I'll also add, while you're pulling those up, for those of you that have asked about like more strength and things like that, I've actually presented, I think it was last year, Brenda, on nutrition for gaining muscle mass. So that should be in the library of prior presentations. So that was one that I talked about last year. And so hopefully you can access that.
absolutely. And Kim, before we get off, um, towards the end, what we're going to do is I'll show you guys how to access that
Perfect.
specific one as well so that you can actually watch that because that does it's probably a little bit different presentation
Yep.
than this one. And I think probably if you're an athlete and you're wanting to kind of learn as much as you can about all this, be a great way. So yes, we will definitely do that. I'll show how to get that. So Kim, I'm going to go ahead and put your overview
Perfect.
and allow you to start in.
Awesome. Okay. Well, everyone, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm seeing so many great comments and just welcome all of you from all over. And I'm so excited today to talk about nutrition strategies for endurance training. And I get a lot of folks that, have had bariatric surgery or they're now utilizing GLP-1 medication or both. And it is hard to learn how to fuel for more endurance training because it does require more energy. So we're going to dive into lots of different things today. First off, we'll talk about what are the different endurance training phases, just to give an overview so you can kind of understand how your nutrition may change over a training program if you are looking to, complete an endurance event. How to adjust nutrition as endurance training phases change. Macronutrient strategies for pre, during, and post-workout fueling. hydration and electrolyte targets, key race day fueling tips, and we're going to talk about identifying vitamins and minerals that are essential for bariatric endurance athletes. Okay, so first thing I wanted to dive into, and I know there's a lot of information on this slide, and I'm not going to read every single line, but I do want to just highlight that, guys, when you are training for endurance, meaning maybe it's going to be, you might be starting with a 5K, and that for you might be longer than you've ever done. That's awesome. It might be a 10K, it might be a half marathon or full or a triathlon. And I wanted to kind of highlight here how how the training is going to change, as well as then how the nutrition will change. So when we talk about endurance training phases, we're going to start off with our base building phase. And this is going to be where we focus on our aerobic capacity, our endurance, and our fueling tolerance. So again, if this is something that's a new goal for you, we want to make sure that we don't just go, oh, I want to sign up for a half marathon. I think I'm going to do that next month. We want to give our bodies time to build up that endurance and our body's ability to fuel and tolerate the new nutrition that's going to be required. So generally, this phase is going to include more low to moderate intensity training, higher volume, gradual introduction of long runs on the weekends, if that's what you're doing, or longer cycling events. And typically, this is typical. Again, this might be highly individualized for you, but the average length might be 6 to 12 weeks for a beginner or intermediate, or even longer if you are going to build up to a marathon or an ultra marathon of 12 to 16 weeks. The next phase after that, we would start moving into a build or our peak phase. And this is where we might start incorporating more intensity and speed workouts and race-specific endurance training. So this might be anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. And again, as I mentioned, you might be starting trialing some tempo runs, meaning you're trying to push yourself to run a little bit faster over those shorter distances, maybe some interval runs, longer runs on the weekends, and increased mileage as we build towards that race day. Now, the tapering phase is where we are getting right before the race, and that's generally about 1 to 3 weeks before the target race day. And that's where we're going to start maybe reducing our mileage gradually, because we're trying to get our body ready to be in its prime for race day. So as you can see, we've built up. We're doing our build on our peak phase, and then we start tapering as we get closer to race day to allow our body to heal, recover, and be in its peak form for race day. And then, of course, race week and race day, there will be specific nutrition strategies that we will follow. There's going to be, we're going to be focused on fluids and electrolytes and carbs and, letting our legs heal and rest up and be ready for race day. So I wanted to give you this overview just to give you an idea, if this is a new goal for you, as to how you might structure your program as you work towards this race event. So how do our nutrition needs change then across the training phases? And I like to really talk about this because some of the biggest questions I get, especially for someone that's had bariatric surgery, is, do I just eat the same after, the nutrition that I had since my surgery? Is that going to be able to fuel me for, this more endurance type of training? And the answer to that is no, because your nutrition from right after you had surgery to training for an endurance type of event is going to require new nutrition, goals and intake. So during that base building phase, which remember was the beginning, that long phase of getting our body prepped and learning how to kind of train for more endurance, is going to require more moderate carbohydrate intake. So that will be a step up from your, bariatric nutrition guidelines. Still consistent protein, because protein is really important for muscle recovery, so that our legs are not totally dead when we, work out, and building tolerance to fueling. So for a lot of you, what I have found is that carbohydrate introduction is new after surgery, or even if you're on a GLP-1, how do I fit that into my daily plate? So that is where we have to really focus in starting to trial new carbohydrate-rich foods, as well as some sports nutrition products for our workouts. In the building and peak phase, our carbohydrate needs even increase a little further, because this is where our intensity level is increasing. And I want to highlight that carbohydrate is the main macronutrient at moderate to high intensity levels for our muscles to draw upon. So when we're in that build peak phase and we're doing more tempo runs or more interval runs where we're really pushing ourselves in our pacing, this is where carbohydrates will really be important, as well as optimizing your pre, during, and post-workout fueling and starting to practice those race day fueling plans. In the taper phase, which is that, couple weeks before race day, we're still going to be incorporating carbohydrates. It'll be moderate to high carbohydrate intake to maintain those stored carbs in your muscles so that you're ready for race day. We want to avoid new foods during this time so that we're not having a lot of GI upset or any constipation. And we want to start really fine-tuning those race day fueling guidelines. And then lastly, race week or race day, this is where we prioritize our carbohydrates, fluids, and electrolytes prior to the race as well as during. And something that I'll say twice in this presentation is we never ever try anything new on race day. So everything that you're going to trial in on your race is going to be something that you have practiced already. Okay, so I wanted to just highlight, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, guys. I have on my website, and there's a QR code here up at the right corner of the slide that will provide you a free handout, and this is my active bariatric nutrition training plates. And these are, this handout is just a really nice summary for someone that's had surgery, understanding how do I change my nutrition based on my type of training that I do. So this resource will show you how much time you're working out, how many days a week, and the type of workout will dictate what your plate should look like. So for easy light training days, workouts that are maybe 30 minutes or less, maybe up to 45 minutes lower intensity, you would stick to an easy or a light training day plate. And that's going to be very similar to a bariatric plate. Half your plate being protein, you're still getting some fruits and vegetables, and we are incorporating a small portion of starch. Moderate training day is going to be where we're starting to increase mileage. Maybe the workout's going to be longer in duration. And as you can see here, the plate shifts where we're going to start incorporating a little bit more whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, which, of course, as you know, are giving you carbohydrates, and those fuel our muscles. We still are incorporating our protein, but again, the focus is starting to incorporate more carbs in our diet. And then for high-intensity training days, long endurance, multiple training sessions in a day, the high intensity training plate is going to be the guideline there, because half of your plate there is going to be a serving of whole grains or starch or complex carbs like pasta, potato, rice. We're still going to have our fruits and vegetables, and we'll still have our protein. So if you want to scan that QR code in the upper right corner, this is a free handout. Go ahead and download that, and it has a lot more information there as to how to adjust your plates. All right, so now I'm going to start diving into those macronutrient priorities for endurance training so that we can talk a little bit about, what do we need to be focusing on with our nutrition in order to fuel your body to cross the finish line, right? And to get through this long training program that we're in. And as I've already mentioned, carbohydrate, guys, is your friend. And I know that it sounds so counterintuitive to what you have been likely educated on from your bariatric surgical center. But I want to reiterate, you have new goals, right? You are not in the lowest caloric point, in terms of your overall intake, where maybe you're just starting to build up, with endurance or walking or things like that. As you are now focused on crossing these longer distances, carbohydrates are really going to be your friend. Now, everyone listening is going to have a different amount of carbs that they feel well with, depending upon, their type of workouts, their duration, frequency, etc. So I want to say to you, every one of you is going to have different goals, but I wanted to just reiterate that, sources that are going to be rich in your carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables, complex carbs, as I already mentioned, like bread and pasta, rice, potato, beans, oats, as well as soy and dairy and sports nutrition products. These can all be part of a very healthful bariatric diet. It's okay. Carbohydrates really can help you to fuel your body so that you're able to cross these distances. Now, I always get that question then, well, how much carbohydrate do I need, right? And so for those of you that are more into numbers, I don't want to shout a bunch of numbers and confuse you, but I do want to provide this for those of you that are into, really kind of getting into some calculations and some macro guidelines. The typical carbohydrate need for someone that's had bariatric surgery, of course, is going to be on the lower end for carbs, right? Because what is our focus after bariatric surgery? Protein food first, right? And then we're rounding out our plates with, carbs and heart healthy fats. So typically for someone that's just kind of starting to increase activity, folks can do fine with, anywhere from 2 to 3 grams per kilogram of body weight for carbohydrates. And so, for example, as you can see in that white box there, for a 150-pound athlete, that might mean 136 grams of carb, maybe up to about 204 grams of carb on this lower end of the range. Now, for those of you, though, that are building up into half and full marathons or triathlons or longer cycling events, this is where the carbohydrate needs start to build, and increase. And that is going, again, to be very dependent upon how far out you are from surgery and your tolerance. Because I can give you all these beautiful numbers, but if you don't tolerate this amount of carbohydrates, then it doesn't work for you, and that's okay. We have to find the amount that works best for you and how well you feel with that. So as you can see here, distances that are longer may require a much higher amount of carbs to really fuel that type. And so up to 6 grams per kilogram may be something that down the road is something that you could build up to. And again, it may not be appropriate for you, but this is just an example of how the needs increase based on your training. So that could be for a 150-pound athlete up to 400 grams of carbohydrate per day. And I'll just highlight too, for a lot of you that are listening, I think, geez, that is so many carbs. I don't know how I would do that. It would most likely be for a shorter window of time where you would need the higher carbohydrate to really fuel these longer training sessions. And then again, as the training sessions and the program changes, we could always lower your carbohydrates back to what you need. Okay, so don't be afraid when you hear these numbers. It can be done. It just has to be really individualized for you. Okay. So macronutrient priorities for endurance training, we're going to move on to proteins and fats. So of course, many of you are familiar with protein-rich foods, right? I don't even need to go over the sources. I'm sure chicken, pork, beef, eggs, all of our animal products, our seafood, our dairy and plant-based sources like soy and beans and legumes. And so when we're thinking about how much protein do we need for an endurance training athlete, it's going to be a little bit different as compared to someone that's focused on strength only. So for those of you listening that are like, hey, I'm really focused on an endurance training cycle, the range for protein is about 1.2 to 1.8 gram per kilogram. And that's about, let's call it about 0.5 to maybe about 0.7 or so, maybe about 0.8 gram per pound. So again, for a 150-pound athlete, that's going to be about 81 to 122 grams of protein per day, which is a pretty reasonable amount of protein, especially for someone that's had bariatric surgery. And probably for a lot of you, this amount of protein would be something that you already are capable of targeting right now. But I want to highlight protein because when we get to endurance training, we talk a lot more about carbs, but I do want to highlight that protein is still important for you who are training for this type of event because it's really necessary for muscle maintenance, repair, and recovery. And then fats, we don't want to forget about fats. We always focus on carbs and protein and our fluids and our vitamins, and fats kind of are that last macronutrient that we just kind of, if we get it in, we get it in. But fats are really important too for endurance training because your body can utilize fat as an energy source at low to moderate intensity levels. Your body is able to break down fat for an energy source. So we still want to make sure we're getting in fats because they provide a lot of calories per serving as well. So that helps you to boost your overall intake in a day. So I want to highlight, we don't want to forget about fats. They're still part of a healthful diet and we should be incorporating them to help boost our calories. So I'll just finish by saying there's tons of trial and error to determine what you need and feel well with. Please work with a registered dietitian because we can calculate out all your needs based on what training phase you are in and how you're feeling. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about what to do and how to eat around your training sessions, okay? So this can be whether this is training for the actual day-to-day training runs, or this can be also in preparation for race day as well. So as I've already mentioned several times, carbohydrates are the preferred energy source for your muscles. So of course, we want to make sure that in our pre-workout meals or snacks, that carbohydrate is the main focus, okay? And I want to highlight this first point here, training your gut, and that just means, your intestinal tract, which is absorbing and digesting the nutrition that you're eating. we can train your gut or your intestines to tolerate more carbohydrates over time. Okay, so building up carbohydrates slowly over time at each meal and snack is something that it takes a long time to do that. So you don't want to start trialing some new carb foods, in the few weeks before race day. We want to start that right out of the gate. When you begin training for whatever race that is, we want to start incorporating a little bit more carbohydrate at each meal and snack to see how we feel. But also in terms of sports nutrition products and things that you think you might carry with you on race day, we want to be starting to practice with those right at the beginning of our training program so that your body starts to get used to those and is able to fuel your muscles with them. Okay. Now, what you eat and how much is going to depend upon how much time you have before the start of your training session or race. So if you have about 3 to 4 hours pre-workout, so let's say you're working out in the afternoon, your meal that's 3 to 4 hours ahead of that training session can be a little bit more well-rounded, okay? You can incorporate protein, 20 to 40 grams or so. If you can tolerate more, that's fine. Certainly, we want to have our carbohydrate-rich foods anywhere from 30 to 45 grams and more. If you can tolerate that, that's fine, depending upon how far out you are from surgery. And then smaller portions of fat and fiber, because fat and fiber take longer to digest, and we don't want them sitting in your stomach heavy when you go out to run or walk, whatever it might be. So some meal ideas that are 3 to 4 hours pre-workout might be like a deli meat sandwich, oatmeal with fruit and nuts, low-fat Greek yogurt with some berries or chia seeds and nuts topping, the yogurt. You could do chicken and vegetables with some rice. As you can see, these are going to be more well-rounded, meals because you have longer for that food to digest and absorb and get out of the way and out of your stomach. If you want to go ahead to the next slide there, Brenda. As we get closer then, guys, when we get within an hour or two of your workout, we want to start reducing our overall volume of intake, and we want to really focus mostly on easy to digest carbohydrate-rich foods and fluids. Why is that? Because if we eat something that's high in fiber or fat or even a very protein-rich meal right before we walk out the door, it's going to be sitting in our stomach and we're not going to feel well. It's not digesting in time to provide energy, and also it just might make you feel a little bit bloated or uncomfortable. So as we get closer to the start of your workouts, we want to be focusing on things that are going to come in and get out quickly, right? And get to your muscles so that your body can use that. So we want to pick things that are low in fat and fiber. We want to pick things that are easy to digest. And as you can see on the right there, I have some pre-workout ideas for when you're within an hour or so. That might just be like a half or one banana, applesauce pouch, 2 to 3 graham crackers, 2 dates or like other dried fruit like raisins, handful of pretzels or dry cereal. Sports drink can just be something else that you can carry with you. So the ideal amount of carbohydrate that you want to aim for in this 1 hour before your workout is only about 15 to 30 grams of carbohydrate in that 1 to 2 hours, so that it's just a quick energy source that your muscles can utilize easily and quickly. So again, I'll just summarize. When we get closer, smaller volume, easy to digest carbs that can fuel you very quickly. Okay? So for those of you that get up super early and the first thing you do is run in the morning, any of those quick to digest carbs would be better than nothing. If you can tolerate some carbohydrate, I would recommend it. Okay. Now, as we move into during nutrition training guidelines, so this is while you're in the workout, right? So while you're out there walking or running, some guidelines that can help you to decide what you need to carry with you. If your workout is less than an hour, generally speaking, you can carry water with you, and you can rely on your pre and post-workout meals and subsequent meals throughout the day to fuel your workouts. So when we're doing short duration that are maybe lower intensity, this is where, we want to make sure that, of course, we're fueling adequately at our other meals. That's generally going to be adequate. However, if your workout is longer than an hour continuous, it's high intensity, or if it's in an environment that's hot and humid, this is where you will benefit from adding in some carbohydrates, fluids, and electrolytes during the workout. Okay. And then this lastly here is for sessions that are 2.5 hours or longer. So for your long training sessions, your race day, this is where our carbohydrate needs may need to bump up. But again, for someone that's had bariatric surgery, these high carbohydrate ranges are often not attainable, especially the first, time through usually. I do see some bariatric endurance athletes able to target 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate in an hour when they're working out. But most of the time, I see people reaching 30 to 60 grams pretty consistently. And that's generally well tolerated, digested, and folks feel well and they're able to finish the race. So I want to highlight that when you see sports nutrition guidelines that are out there that are not meant for bariatric individuals, they're going to be in this higher range of carb, right? Because we know that those higher amounts can be helpful. But for someone that's had bariatric surgery, you may not digest that as well, right? You might have some bloating, diarrhea, some gas cramping. And so we might have to start on the lower end and build up slowly based on your tolerance. Okay. So the last thing I'll just say here is using mixed source carbohydrates, so not just glucose. So a lot of the gels and products now out there will have a mixture of different carbohydrates, which your body will digest and absorb easier than one straight single carbohydrate source. And so that's why most of the products out there already do that for you. So you don't have to worry about that. Liquids and smaller, more frequent doses during your training runs are better tolerated for someone that's had bariatric surgery or even on a GLP-1. So now we're going to talk a little bit about hydration and electrolyte guidelines during our, training sessions. So for just straight fluid guidelines, guys, I know a lot of you that have had surgery are looking at, that 64 ounces a day of fluid. And for a lot of you, you might think like, that's challenging enough for me, right? That's hard to get just the 64 ounces, especially earlier post-op. As you move forward, in your journey from when you had your surgery, generally speaking, you will be able to tolerate more fluids at one time as well as in the total day. So a standard rule of thumb for someone that's more active and is losing more fluid, obviously from sweat losses, your fluid needs are going to be a little bit higher. So a rule of thumb would be a 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce per pound of body weight per day. So for example, for a 150-pound athlete, that would be anywhere from 75 to 150 ounces of fluids per day. And that's meant to help keep you hydrated so that when you go during your training runs, you're already coming into those sessions in a well-hydrated state. Now, a couple tips for staying hydrated and really being able to come into these training sessions well hydrated, well fueled would be sipping on about 16 to 24 ounces of fluid in those few hours beforehand. Of course, I know you're thinking like, I need to go to the bathroom before that. Yep, definitely have to probably go to the bathroom before you step out the door, but you want to come into these training sessions well hydrated. During training, 4 to 6 ounces of fluids every 15 to 20 minutes is the standard guideline. And again, that's going to be sipping. And I usually tell people 1 gulp is about 1 ounce. So if you're taking about 4, gulps of fluid every about 15 to 20 minutes, 4 to 6 ounces or so, that's going to keep you, ahead of that dehydration. We don't want to get to that point. So you want to be sipping throughout. And then for sodium, which I want to highlight because a lot of times folks will come to me and they're like, hey, I'm, eating a banana because I know how important potassium is. Well, guys, when we are talking about our sweat, you are losing more sodium than potassium in your sweat. And so when you look at sports nutrition products, that is why they are formulated with a higher amount of sodium in them, because that is what you are losing in your sweat at a higher concentration. So the standard guideline to replenish that is about 300 to 600 milligrams of sodium per hour of your training run or race. And this, of course, will be dependent upon your sweat rate, because I do have folks that are considered salty sweaters, and I'll explain what that is. Do any of you notice after long training sessions, whether it's a run, a workout in the gym, a cycling, that you might have a little grime on your forehead, like a white kind of gritty feeling? Maybe it's under your brim of your hat or on your forehead or on your neck or chest. You would be considered then a more salty sweater. That's actually sodium chloride. And so in your case, you may benefit from products that have a little bit higher sodium concentration in the product to help replace what you are losing in your sweat. So again, if that's you, certainly reach out to me. I can always recommend you some of the higher sodium products that are out there because you would benefit likely from a little bit higher amount than that 300 to 600 milligrams in an hour. And I could always help you with that. Now, here are some sample sports nutrition products that have worked well with the, in the almost 19 years that I've been working with active bariatric individuals. I've been through lots of different products. And of course, every one of you will be a little bit different. But these have been products that have really helped a wide variety of active individuals who've had surgery, and they tolerate them well. UCAN is a cornstarch, and it is very well digested and absorbed because it basically gets digested at a slower rate as compared to just like the goos and the gels that are out there. So I've had a lot of bariatric endurance athletes do well with the UCAN brand. They have powders and gels and goos and things. Huma is also another one that uses a chia puree. And so it's giving you a little bit of both carbohydrate, a small portion of protein, and a small portion of fiber in it. So it helps to digest a little slower. So again, for someone that's had bariatric surgery that doesn't tolerate those simple sugars as easily, these two brands are really well tolerated in my experience. Scratch Labs, Morton, Gatorade products, the CIS, Tailwind, and GOO, or SIS, I should say, and then the GOO. These are all products that have worked well for folks that I have worked with when they are starting endurance training. And again, as I mentioned, the ways that these products are formulated, they come in gels, goos, chews, drinks, and powders that you can mix with water. And then I'll just lastly say, reading labels to understand how much carbohydrate and electrolyte you are getting from each product to hit your hourly goals. And I'll just mention that, if you don't tolerate these sports nutrition products, for some folks, they just do not. They do not go well with them after surgery or on a GLP-1. You can try foods that have carbohydrates and electrolytes that are in a whole food state. So things like graham crackers, dates, fruit chews, dry cereal or pretzels, the honey stinger waffles. I have a lot of folks carry with them on their races. These can be alternative to the sports nutrition products that will still provide you with that energy that you need, and being in that range of 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. All of these types of products and foods can help you hit that target. And then for post-workout or recovery nutrition tips, so something that I teach when I'm teaching my bariatric strong clients, which is my folks that are focused on gaining muscle, but it's the same for my endurance. Folks, as soon as you are able to tolerate nutrition after your training session ends, we want to try to get nutrition in. It's not because the timing is so critical. It's because for someone that's had bariatric surgery or that is on a GLP-1, their overall intake is limited in a day. And so if you are going long periods of the day without getting nutrition in, it's going to be very hard for you by the end of the day to meet your needs, right? Because you're limiting the amount of hours that you have left to hit, these larger numbers. And you just, generally speaking, can't eat larger portions at one time. And so in my experience working with folks, better tolerate is as soon as you can, start to put some fuel back into your body after your workouts, the better, because not only is it going to start that recovery process so that your muscles can get that fuel back in the tank to get you ready for your next training session, it's going to allow you to hit your overall daily goals for calories and carbs and proteins and fats. So I want to highlight that as soon as you're able to tolerate, we want to aim for about 20 to 40 grams of protein. Certainly you can have a little bit more than that if you can tolerate it, and at least 30 grams of carbohydrate to help refill that tank, which is your muscle stores. Okay. We want to rehydrate with 16 to 24 ounces of fluids for every 1 pound lost in sweat. If you're wondering how to sort that out, if you weighed 150 pounds before your workout and you came home and you weighed 148, that means you lost 2 pounds in sweat. And so you'd want to rehydrate with 16 to 24 ounces per pound. So that would be about 32 to 48 ounces is what we want to make sure we're getting back into our body because we lost that in our sweat. Okay. Some sample protein or some sample meals that you can consider having after a workout. If you're just not hungry and you're like, listen, I cannot eat right after a workout, but I can tolerate like a protein shake, great. Get that in. That's no problem. Start with that. And then maybe a few hours later, we want to get a meal in. Okay. But if we want to get the protein paired with carbs, you could do protein shake with like a banana, an egg sandwich with tomato, avocado, a turkey and cheese wrap, or a deli sandwich would be fine. You could do chicken and rice bowl with beans. Again, we're trying to pair those carbs and proteins so that we're putting that fuel back into the tank. So anytime, as soon as you can tolerate it is what I would recommend after the workout. Just start trying to put some nutrition back in so that you're ready to go the next day. And then race day fueling tips, guys, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that we have to strategize for on race day, but I wanted to just give some main points for you to think about as you're preparing for your race. number one, most important, is we never try anything new on race day. Whether that's your clothing, whether that's, your fluids that you're carrying, the foods that you're going to be, fueling with, we don't want to just try something new because you don't know how you're going to tolerate it. And I would hate for you to have worked all the way through this training program to not feel well on race day and not be able to finish. So we never try anything new on race day. Also, when we are doing an endurance event, we want to fuel early and often. So that means we're going to have our good pre-workout meal. Within the first 20 to 30 minutes of the race starting, we are already putting in carbs and electrolytes and fluids. So we start early. We start fueling often throughout the race so that you don't get to a point where you're behind, okay? Because if you are already hitting the wall, you're behind on your nutrition and it's going to be very hard to catch up, okay? Aiming for small, frequent carbohydrate doses of about every 20 to 30 minutes is going to generally help to stay on top of that need so that you can continue crossing this, distance. We want to plan your nutrition intake either by mile marker or by time. And so when I'm working with my clients, we make a spreadsheet just to show them they can either take their fueling in by miles that they're crossing or by a certain time. So maybe they want to fuel every, 20 minutes. They can set their alarm on their watch to go off every 20 minutes, and that reminds them that they need to either be sipping or taking in something to eat to help them stay on track. So either of those strategies can work. It'll really just be dependent upon what you feel well doing. Sipping fluids regularly rather than large boluses generally is better tolerated after surgery or on GLP-1s. And again, carrying with you what you have practiced with and never rely on race course fueling. I can't tell you the number of times folks have gotten to the race. Maybe they saw online that the race is providing Gatorade or Tailwind. They're like, oh, great, that's what I use. I'm just going to rely on the aid stations. And halfway through the race, they get there and guess what? The aid station's out. Or it's not mixed at the same concentration that they're used to and they don't feel well. So I always tell folks, you bring what you're going to fuel with. Use the aid stations for maybe additional water or some sips of it, Gatorade, things like that. But you have your own fueling strategies with you and packed with you. Okay. And then lastly here, I just want to talk briefly about vitamins and minerals of interest for endurance training. So guys, as much as we spend time talking about carbs and proteins and fats and fluids, etc., I want to highlight the importance of vitamins and minerals and how important they are for you. For someone that's had bariatric surgery and isn't absorbing and taking in all the vitamins and minerals that they once were, or digesting and absorbing them as well. And so your bariatric vitamin and mineral supplements are absolutely critical. Okay. And I just wanted to highlight some here that are important for active bariatric individuals. Iron is really important for oxygen transport to your muscles so that, hitting the wall, that early feeling of fatigue can be from someone that has a deficiency in iron. And so this is one that you want to always make sure you are having tested, annually for life. You're having your bariatric labs drawn, and that if is necessary for you, you should be taking supplements that can contain iron, right? Now, some of you may not need it, but for many of us, especially ladies, due to menstruation, for people that are doing high endurance training, you can lose iron in what's called foot strike hemolysis, which is a rupture of the red blood cell, just basically from running. And then also through sweat, feces, you actually can lose minerals as well. So iron is really important for my endurance athletes. I want to make sure I highlight that, as well as B12, which plays an important role in red blood cell formation, which is carrying that iron and oxygen to your muscles. Also for energy metabolism, to create energy for your cells so that you can run longer, you need B12. Also, calcium and vitamin D, as you all know, I'm sure is important for bone health and muscle function. And then also magnesium and zinc is helpful for muscle contraction and recovery. Even magnesium can be helpful with sleep. So that's very important in these higher training cycles that you're in. So again, as a reminder, I want to really hone in on, for everyone listening, how important it is that you stay on top of your annual labs and make sure that you have them drawn before endurance training program begins so that we can address any deficiencies so that you're feeling well during the training session. And then make sure that you are prioritizing your daily bariatric vitamin and mineral supplements every day for life. There is no finish line that you cross where you don't have to take these. If you've had bariatric surgeries, this is part of your life forever. And as you can see on my slide here, I have a lot of my clients use ProCare's bariatric multivitamin that has, they have a wide variety of different iron, but a lot of my clients are on the 45 milligrams of iron. They have individualized nutrient supplements as well, iron. They have calcium and vitamin D. They have a Mag D that does have magnesium as well as some other minerals. And so a lot of my clients do use ProCare for their supplementation. And I know Brenda's going to talk about that more here, but I wanted to just reiterate, we don't want to sleep on our vitamin and mineral supplements, okay? They're so important for you. And then just to summarize, fueling is going to change based on the phase of training you are in. So again, based on where you are with your training cycle will determine what you need in terms of your overall food intake and macros. Targeting optimal macronutrient intake before, during, and after your workouts will help prevent injury and illness and prepare you to cross that finish line on race day. Having a race day strategy for your fueling needs and practice ahead of time is so key. Please don't just wing it. We want to think about these things and have these practices in place so that you have the most successful race day. Vitamins and minerals play a huge role in your body's ability to produce energy and to recover and stay illness-free and injury-free. Please stay consistent with your supplementation and have those annual labs drawn every single year. And then I just always finish with working with a bariatric registered dietitian really can help you, especially when you have these specialized training and fitness goals. Dietitians are helpful in establishing your unique goals. So I wanted to just put that little plug out there. We are happy to help you so that you can have a nutrition program that is going to help to fuel these new and exciting goals after surgery. So guys, I'm going to finish off with these two slides. I do have a new program that I'm launching in 2026. It is called Bariatric Endurance. I have a Bariatric Strong program as well, but in 2026, I'm going to be launching this new program. And it's going to be likely at either the end of February, beginning of March is what I'm aiming for the launch of this program. And this is a 6-week online program to help you to optimize your nutrition for endurance training. So that can be for someone that's just starting with 5Ks that are maybe building up to a 10K, half or full, if you're doing triathlons or cycling events, even for folks that are doing endurance hiking. I've worked with lots of folks that are fueling for those goals as well. And this program is really going to help you to learn, how do I develop a nutrition plan that's individualized to me? We have a wonderful community where we talk. I come on every single week, answer questions. I'm working with each and every single one of you, which is why I keep the group small, so that you have your own individualized program to help you to finish whatever that endurance program is that you are training for. So if you are interested in learning more about the program, go ahead and scan this QR code here. This will bring you to the website for this program. And I want to encourage you to join the waitlist now, because I do limit the group. I don't like to have large groups. That allows me to then work one-on-one with you and make sure that your goals are established. So jump on that waitlist right now. That way you have your spot and you will be the first to receive information as to when I open the doors.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah,
Here's,
go ahead.
I hope I didn't go too fast. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this is my last slide, which is just where you can contact me and all my social media. And I do have a podcast called the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast, which I'm actually going to release an episode tomorrow. So check that out. But if you ever have any questions, you can email me. My email's listed here, kim@activebariatric.com, or go to my website, which is activebariatricnutrition.com. And you can always submit a question there as well.
Wow. So much great information. I'm actually gonna stop sharing my screen so I can share in the comments section those same links so that they can copy them and paste them. And so I'm gonna actually send the website links along with your link that they can click on to join the waitlist. I know you have the QR code, but since
Yes.
some people may be watching on their phone, I'm never sure how that really works,
Yes.
you know.
Totally.
So I want to make sure that they can still join the waitlist. If you're joining on Facebook, I'll be placing it there as well. Jump on there real quick and put the link. Kim, any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to say, guys, and I know a lot of folks have surgery or they're on GLP-1 and they don't think that these types of goals are realistic for them, or maybe, sounds like something that's not attainable. It absolutely is. You can fuel for these goals and you can do it. It just takes a little bit of strategy and practice to be able to fuel for these types of events. So I want to encourage you, don't give up on a goal like this. Absolutely, it can be done, and certainly just having to be a little bit more diligent on nutrition, but it can absolutely be done. You can feel great doing it.
Thank you so much. And we are gonna open up to Q&A here. Before we do that, I'm actually gonna pop onto the ProCare website and just kind of talk about some of the products real quickly that Kim shared, and then also share with you how to get free samples if you've never tried ProCare before. So definitely want to share all that. We do have some good sales going on, because we're at that season. So kind of share a little bit about that. So when we're talking about products, I actually pulled up some of the products that Kim mentioned. When you're talking about iron, you can either pair your iron individually or you can pair it with your multivitamin. If you're pairing it with your multivitamin, ProCare does have a lot of different types of multivitamins. I would say probably some of our biggest sellers are multivitamin capsules or chews in 45 milligrams of iron, 18 are iron-free versions. And we have those in capsules and we have those in the chewables. Without kind of going into too much depth, if you do would like a free sample, at the top here, when you go to the main site, there is a little blue bar where it just said free shipping just now. It says interested in a free sample, click here, and you can click and check that out. We also have under this little drop down, we have listed our calcium, our therapeutics, our proteins. If I drop onto the therapeutics, the iron that Kim had on her picture, we do have a chelated iron. Let's say you're having a hard time tolerating iron and you cannot take the iron in with your multivitamin. So we do have an iron-free version of that. And then you could add on the iron that way. Or if you're anemic, or like Kim said, sometimes with being a bariatric athlete, sometimes iron needs to increase. So you can add on. This is actually a bifurcated tablet, meaning it's really small, guys. See if it has a picture of it. It does break in half. So you can actually break it in half and you'd have a 30 and 30. And then just real quickly here, we do have our calcium supplementation. We have lots of different flavors. I think she had listed our sea salted caramel on one of the pictures, but we also have dinner mint, cinnamon roll, strawberry swirl, peaches and cream. And recently we just came out with this powdered formulation, which is something you could put in your water or your drinks to make it super easy. And B vitamins, we do have a B1, but we also just came out with a B complex this last month. And basically that has a combination of a lot of the different B vitamins in that. So that is listed under therapeutics, along with our magnesium D or Mag D, which also this product came out around COVID because a lot of people were wanting something to support immunity. So this actually also has zinc in it that Kim mentioned as well. So just a whole combination of things. I'm going to real quickly just also share on our website, if you guys do want to access any of the extra resources they have, we have this little tab that says, Bari-Connected. And when I have too many. Whoops, I'm going to move my bar so it'll allow me to do that. Bari-Connected. And when you click onto that, guys, that's where you're going to be able to access each month's support group that we have listed. Obviously, if you need to jump back on and you want to listen again, because sometimes I think listening a second time is super helpful just because there's so much great information. So you can go back in or you can use the same link that was sent through your email. Also, if you want to access any of the support groups that we've done in the past, we have some of those videos on here as also a YouTube link to our YouTube channel. And I actually have that pulled up. I'm going to show them, Kim, how to kind of look and be able to access previous ones, such as the one that you did. So there is a little stuff. Make sure and press the subscribe button, obviously. Jump onto Kim's channel too, Active Bariatrics, and subscribe to hers. But here, if you type in Kim's name, under the search feature under our channel, you're going to actually get the videos that we've done together previously, which was nutrition for muscle gain after bariatric surgery. We also did one optimizing your nutrition to fuel your workouts. We did movement and macros to meet your goals after bariatric surgery, and that was with Kim and Rob DeMedio. So just all different kinds of additional videos that we've done there before together. And we just welcome you as part of our community. So I'm going to kind of stop sharing because I do want to kind of, hopefully, we have just a few minutes here. I want to welcome all these comments that are coming in too. I'm going to go back and just kind of hit a few highlights of the people that have asked a few questions, Kim, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have Antoinette that says, my team kept me on 60 grams of protein and 1,200 calories. She said that women don't need more than that. I chose not to eat rice, pasta, potatoes, bread, and high sugary foods. Being a former diabetic, he used to be on insulin. And I'm not 100% sure. I think her question is gearing if you agree with those suggestions or if you have any additional add-ons related to that. Because I know sometimes programs, they're very regimented, and I understand that because that's the guidelines they've been given. But
Yes. It's such a great point. And I think that's where the frustration comes in when folks have these new goals. And what I always will say is you have a new goal, right? Which means your nutrition should change, whether that's for gaining muscle, whether that's for training for endurance. And so the 1,200 calories, 60 grams of protein per day is the standard post-bariatric nutrition guidelines. And those are kind of the minimums that our body, the 60 grams of protein for sure, really we want to make sure we're getting in at a bare minimum. Most people are going to need more than that to be able to accomplish these new goals. And so, I've talked with many surgeons, and I think honestly, the real issue, Brenda, is there just hasn't been a lot of research for physicians to rely upon for this population. And so the research that we have was always that 1,200 calories, 60 grams of protein being the minimum that most women and men need at the bare minimum, right? But now that we have folks that have had the surgery and they've got all of these new training and fitness goals, we can't just rely on those standard guidelines because they're just not generally enough for people. So what I would say is it's going to be highly individualized based on how you feel, what your goals are, how often you're working out, what you're doing. And most likely, I would suspect you'll need more than this to meet your goals. But again, it'll be individualized.
okay, thank you, Kim. Let's see here. For the long sessions, have you found that the UCAN gels are okay as directed every 45 minutes, even though they are lower carb? Or is it better to gut train and work on another product?
Yeah, this is a great question, Allie. So, yes, UCAN in general tells you to do it every 45 minutes because of the slower release. And so I have had folks that do fine with that. But I also have people that will utilize the UCAN as one product and then utilize other carbohydrate sources or electrolytes specifically in other products. And so they do a little bit of both. So unfortunately, I wish I could say there was one straight guideline I could tell you. It's going to be very individualized based on what you need, how you're feeling, and, do you need more than that? So I would say you'd have to try it and see if the every 45 minutes of the UCAN is okay, or if you do feel like you need more, and that way you might have to add in something.
It looks like Allie also says salt sticks are my new favorite, so much easier to deal with than Gatorade. So
Yes,
great suggestion. I mean,
yes, those are great.
how do you carry that volume of water for something like a marathon, for a 4 hour, 20-minute marathon? That's 65 ounces of fluids.
Yeah. So most likely you won't be able to carry 65 ounces of fluids in the folks that I work with, what I'll have them generally do based on what they're carrying, whether they're doing a pack, whether they're doing a waist belt, handheld. I've had people that will utilize, 2 handhelds and then utilize the stations for additional water. But what they're carrying with them in terms of their handheld or their waist pack, whatever it might be, is more the carbohydrate and electrolyte products that they tolerate. It's hard, like I mentioned, to rely only on race stations because you just don't know if they're going to have it by the time you get there, if it's the right concentration. I've had also folks that have people, family and friends that are supporting them in these races that halfway through will exchange bottles with them. They'll give them a new fresh bottle of whatever they're carrying with them so that they have, additional fluids. It's really going to come down to practicing that and how much do you need. Again, the recommendations of 4 to 6 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes is going to be very individualized. Some people need less than that. Some people need more than that. And so what I would say is it's going to be, again, a lot of trial and error, and you want to practice that in those long runs. Okay. But I understand what you're saying. That's a good point.
Yeah, one other thing too, I know my sister's a runner. She's done a lot of marathons. And one thing that she's done on her training days, not necessarily because it is hard on your days that you actually have the race, but on her training days, she'll actually drive out and like place, I
Yeah.
mean, kind of hide it,
Yes.
in some weeds or whatever, but
Yeah.
like hide so you don't have to carry so much fluids along with you. But
Totally.
that's also a suggestion.
I have absolutely had clients do that where they placed it at a certain spot before the race and they knew where they were going to pick it up as long as it's still there.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Any labs to make sure that are being ordered by your general practitioner alongside all the normal labs, I would
Yeah.
assume that's
Yeah.
normally ordered.
I mean, main ones for sure for runners are going to be. I would definitely highlight iron. So ferritin, do an iron panel. So total iron binding capacity, ferritin, hemoglobin, hematocrit, so that we know if you're falling into an iron deficiency or anemia. We want to obviously address that. Vitamin B12, vitamin D, calcium is going to be run as well with vitamin D, but it's not a lab that you're going to see generally speaking unless you have others medical conditions happening where you're going to see significant changes in calcium. But vitamin D, B12, iron for sure would be ones that I would make sure that I'm having tested, throughout the year. And those are going to be in your bariatric panels that you should be having run annually.
Okay, wonderful. Meg says labs are critical. I use ProCare with iron and take prescribed iron too. Helps with iron storage, makes all the difference. And Meg, you've been a longtime user, so thank you for giving us your little long testimonial. Samantha says, woohoo, bariatric RDs are awesome. I am biased.
Yay, I
We're
agree,
so
Samantha.
glad you're here. We actually do have a lot of coordinators and dietitians that join us on these. So it helps them to be able to share with their patients because this isn't a widely known topic. And honestly, there's not a lot of programs out there to be able to teach. Kim, do you work also like these, maybe dietitians and nurses and things like that? Do you commonly work with them also as well to help them?
I don't have that as a current service, but I do field lots of questions and conversations that I meet with bariatric dietitians that, don't have as, an understanding maybe or just experience really with these types of bariatric patients that are now having these fitness and training goals. So oftentimes I will field, questions and things. I always just tell dietitians, if you ever have a question, feel free. You can message me on Instagram, Active Bariatric, or email me. And I'd be happy to help if I can. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Christine asked, is there a way to send these sites and links to the email you send out? We haven't been doing that. That's an absolutely great idea. But what I would recommend too is if you don't catch them on this live event, we always do put all of these links and everything that I'm sharing on our replays that we put on YouTube. Those are generally always posted the Tuesday following an event. So if you ever want to come back, I know it's a week usually before we post all of that, but we usually will have that available. But thank you for asking. I love that suggestion. I can also bring that up to my colleagues. Antoinette says, sounds good. Let's see. Surgery weight was 230, current weight 107, and I always feel like I'm starving when I leave from work and want more food. I'm very active at work.
Yeah. So let me just comment on this. Antoinette, if you are, you're active at work and you're training for endurance, you're likely going to need, more fueling than probably what you might be consuming right now from what you're saying, it sounds like. And so what I would say is where can we, take in some additional snacks? Can we bring fueling with us for our training sessions? We're targeting pre and post workout nutrition. You might have to eat a little bit more frequently if you can't take in as much volume in order to get in more. And you may also benefit by adding foods that are richer in fat, because that's going to give you more bang for your buck in terms of calories, and of course protein and carbs as well. But I want to highlight that a lot of times people feel this way, where they feel starving. And generally another tip is, are you going long periods, from when you wake up to when you first have your first meal? Are you working out first thing in the morning without having pre or post workout nutrition? That can then kind of set your day up for, now I'm feeling more hungry throughout the whole day. So I always tell folks that timing around the workouts as well as the subsequent meals throughout the day, we might have to be a little bit more frequent with it. And so that might be something to consider.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna see jump on the Q&A button too and make sure. I don't see anything on Facebook. Um,
I'll just highlight Samantha. It sounds like Samantha here is a dietitian.
yeah.
She loves sports nutrition. It's a passion of hers. She's so happy she could join today. And this is a topic that comes up a lot in practice. So yeah, it's hard because, again, there's no bariatric sports nutrition set guidelines. And, for someone, when you're, health expert and you're practicing in the field, you're relying on the research, right? You're relying on what are the research guidelines, the clinical studies that, have been provided for these types of folks and their goals. And there just really isn't any. And so a lot of this anecdotal experience, that I've had is over these, almost 19 years of doing this. But I will say this, I think now with the GLP-1s coming to the forefront and helping with weight loss and contributing to body composition changes, I feel like we are moving in the right direction with looking at more, how do we maintain muscle mass? How do we fuel people who are taking GLP-1s or maybe have had bariatric surgery when they're wanting to exercise more, do these things? So I'm hoping, and the reason that I have my podcast is to put this out there so that hopefully there's more, light on it, more need, that we have to incorporate these folks into studies so that we can see how do we fuel them properly. So I'm hoping, Samantha, that things change, but utilizing your nutrition knowledge in sports nutrition and bariatric nutrition and kind of merging those together the best way you can for each person is going to be your best way to do it.
Oh, you're getting lots of love here.
Oh, yay. Oh.
Yeah, and really and truly, even like dietitians and things I know, could also access your same information. It'd be helpful for
Absolutely.
patients as well.
Absolutely.
Um, so let's see here. Allie says, I'm hoping to do the endurance program when it's released. I run 30 to 35 miles a week. Is the high end of the calcs you gave enough for that volume?
Yeah, I mean, the high end, especially for the carbohydrates, you may not even need that high end. I don't know if you'll tolerate that. And so, Allie, it'll be very individualized. And in the program, I'll have a calculator that you can insert your own information and it'll provide you with the recommendations. And I go in there and kind of tweak things based on how people are feeling. So even though it's a group nutrition program, every single person will get individualized recommendations so that we can sort out what you need and what you feel best with. Because these are ranges, and so we have to work within them. Some folks don't need that high end. Some people, may need a little bit more. So we have to see what you tolerate.
And it looks like Antoinette has on here what she's been doing currently. Work at 7 a.m. boiled egg, cottage cheese with cottage cheese, and then lunch 12 p.m. grilled chicken, 2 ounces, and cauliflower, broccoli, and rice.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how far out, Antoinette, you are, but that doesn't, I mean, that's not unusual for a bariatric patient, but also it does not include a lot of carbs. So,
Yep. That's just was
Kim,
going to
what
say
would you
that
like
too.
to
Yeah,
say?
I agree with you there. Yeah, I would just say, Antoinette, probably, it looks like a few things back. You're going to the gym around 2 a.m., really eat breakfast. Really don't eat breakfast, maybe a shake. Yeah. So again, whether you're doing a strength workout or like HIIT types of workouts in the gym or doing more, endurance training, you are going to benefit from some addition of some carbohydrates. I know you mentioned earlier that, you don't typically eat more of the starchies or complex carbohydrates, but really, and I really reiterate this with the folks, and every single one of you is going to have your own personal preferences and foods that you tolerate or don't want to incorporate. That's totally up to you. But what I would say is that you can still have a successful journey after bariatric surgery and eat things like starches and complex carbs. They are okay. And I know that that's hard sometimes to get past because we've been kind of ingrained in our brain, especially after surgery, that we should not be eating carbs. But when you're more active, you need them. And you may not ever eat white rice or whites or pasta or something like that because maybe they don't feel good. That's okay. But there's other foods you could try. You could try oats and beans and, sweet potatoes and, fruits and vegetables that you may tolerate more because of the fiber content. So I would encourage you to consider pairing with some of those meals a little bit of carbs.
Kim, I think that's about it as far as our questions go. I just want to thank you for being here, for being a part of our group.
My
Always welcome
pleasure.
you back.
Oh, thank you.
And appreciate everybody that's joined us because you guys are taking care of your bodies, not only your mental health because you're here, you're joining us, and you're concentrating and focused, but also your physical health as well. So wonderful. And we'll see everybody next time on Bari-Connected. Thanks, Kim. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.